Welcome to the Good Intention Show, coming to you live on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention Show is sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation at unitedintentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions one intention at a time. Look for us on Blog Talk, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and many more. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram under United Intentions and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Yes, this is the Good Intention Show, where you will meet people who live life intentionally and hear about things they're not telling you in the mainstream media. And now, here's the truth seeker, the snake charmer, a legend in his own mind, broadcasting live all over the universe, your host, Mr. Tim Ray.
Welcome back to the UI Media Network. I'm Tim Ray, your host on the Good Intention Show. And yes, we have Marianne Williamson here today. She's the Democratic presidential candidate, and we're going to be talking to her right now. Let's bring her in. Hello, Marianne. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Oh, just wonderful. I'm so excited. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your beliefs, because I know running for president is not something you just wakes up every day and decides to do. You know, it's something that you have to plan, you have your thoughts in line, your beliefs in line. But with the spiritual background that you have, Marianne, I mean, you've been on Oprah, you've been a spiritual catalyst and leader for decades now. Why run for president?
Well, you know, the founding of our country was a spiritual and philosophical and moral movement forward. It wasn't just a political incident. When you say to centuries of a social order that has posited that only a very few people get to win, and then in response to that, you establish a country in which all men are seen to have been created equal. And remember, in our Declaration of Independence, the whole point is God gave inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. This is a philosophical and spiritual event and unfolding on the earth, the idea that any of us should be able to have a chance to be whoever we are. That's not separate. You know, that's not a political incident separate from the spiritual and philosophical view of humanity and our place in the universe, as it were.
It seems to have gotten lost too, right, Marianne? Seems to have gotten lost.
Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? And when you look at the different things that have happened in our history, for instance, the abolitionists. The abolitionists came from the early evangelicals and the early Quakers. It was the abolitionists were from a spiritual and religious center that pushed back against slavery and started the march that ultimately led to the emancipation of the slaves. Many of the women who were the leaders of the women's suffrage movement were Quakers, because their whole idea was that God's light is equal in all of us, therefore women should be able to vote. You know, it's that whole on earth as it is in heaven. If you take that seriously, on earth as it is in heaven, you don't say on in heaven, and whatever happening on earth is not my business. On earth as it is in heaven. And then the same with the civil rights movement. The end of segregation came because of a Baptist preacher coming out of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King was a Baptist preacher with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. A lot of that is forgotten. These were all religious and spiritual foundations to great social political movements. So this idea of this, you know, separation of church and state is important, but separation of state and spirituality was not only never intended. The alignment of spirituality, of conscience, of love for each other, of humanitarian principles, the idea that we should do the right thing collectively, just like we should do the right thing individually. You know, this is absolutely essential to our democracy. And when those two things do become divergent, what happens is what's happened, which is you have government behaving in a very soulless way. You know, it's soulless to separate children from their parents. It's soulless to treat the earth the way we have. It is soulless, so much of governmental policy. And meanwhile, the American people are not like that. You know, the American people are just fine. The American people do, in our average, you know, everyday lives, say what's the right thing to do. I should be more loving. I should be more compassionate. I really should forgive that person. But it's almost like we've been mentally trained. We've all gotten the habit of asking those questions in our personal lives and thinking that it's somebody else's business to ask them in our collective and political lives when it comes to public policy. But there's the rub, because the people who are in charge of political policy are not asking those questions necessarily, because what has happened in the last 40 years is the idea of economic principle coming before humanitarian principle. So I'll give you an example. We're now giving aerial support, stuff that happens with the planes, to Saudi Arabia. And we're doing this because we get from them a $360 billion arms sale. And in exchange for that arms sale, we're supporting them in a war that is basically genocidal. Tens of thousands of people in Yemen have starved, including children. Now, Tim, our grandparents would roll over in their graves. What? America's doing this? We were raised to think, no, America didn't act like that. Now, do I think the average American would basically participate in a murder in exchange for money? Of course not.
Marianne.
But that's what's happening politically.
Fascinating, and I'm so glad you brought that up, especially the soulless policies and behaviors that often our leaders are deciding every day. Do you believe it's the soulless policies or the intentions behind it, or do you believe these people are in touch with their souls, or you think they're just disconnected from souls? Do you believe everybody has a soul? Some are connected more so, some are not.
This is not about the individuals. And the individuals, the vast majority of them are good people.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, there were Nazi guards who, loved their children.
Yeah.
This is not about a bunch of bad people sitting in Washington or anywhere else deliberately trying to hurt people. This is about an economic system that is itself amoral, which has immoral consequences. I'll give you an example. Take our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. I'm sure he's a lovely man. This is not a bad person. And he's talked about God and all of that. But this man has allowed for this sale and this aerial support. Now, let me tell you how he answered the question. When it was put to him, how could we do that? How could America do that? His response was, sometimes you have strategic partnerships. He calls it a strategic partnerships, meaning $360 billion. Sometimes he said you have strategic partnerships with people who do not share your values. Well, that means, Tim, you have no values. That means you sacrifice your values. It's not enough to say, I wouldn't do it. If long as for the sake of money, you're going to help somebody else do it, that means you have no values.
Yeah.
So where he's coming from is the idea that the money for defense contractors, that's who's getting this $360 billion, should come before humanitarian principle. That's the problem. Our bottom line is economic rather than humanitarian. That's called idolatry. That's called idolatry, and idols will fall.
Right. Do you believe leading with love, is enough to change the political landscape we have? If we're been from election to election, from president to president, it seems like we go further into a soulless policies and not taking into account spirit and in our decisions that we make on a collective level. Do you think that's enough? Love is enough to move forward and change the political landscape too?
Of course, yes, but people have to wake up. It's interesting. Life, whether it's for us as individuals or for us as citizens, you heal in life one aha at a time. We have to have people. This is why I'm running for president. People, your votes are what make it happen. So if people say, wow, I want doing the right thing, humanitarian principle, love, how can we say we love and then give support to something that's killing all those children? For the Saudi Arabians, when we know that prince is a murderer, the CIA has now determined that. So people have to be willing to vote their values. That's really the question in life. The question is not just, do I love you? The question is, do I behave in a way that expresses my love? Every spiritual seeker knows that. On earth as it is in heaven we're responsible for that. God's already taken care of the in heaven part. The purpose of our lives is to be a conduit so that love is expressed on earth as it is in heaven. Now, there's a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, love restores reason, and not the other way around. What the ego mind indicates is that if you let love run everything, that everything, all hell would break loose. It's the opposite. All hell is broken loose because love is not running things. The way to have peace in a neighborhood, the way to have peace on earth, the way to have economic prosperity is to help people thrive. When people are good to other people, when our economic policies make it easier for people to just be so they're not economically stressed all the time, easier to have health care and college and, just the things that we can do in life just to make it easier for people to be there with their children, to be there with each other so that people can access their own creativity and productivity. That's how to have peace, and that's how to have prosperity as well.
Oh, wonderful. Now, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break here. And when we get back, I want to pose a question to you now, Marianne, and then when we come back, you could answer that. And the question is simply, I love what you're saying in reference to love, leading with love and how to move forward. But we have such a divided country. I mean, Democrats and Republicans, black against white, straight against gay. I mean, just everyone's so divided right now and fighting with each other on many levels. I mean, more so, and new divisions occur every day, haves and have-nots, right? What's your plan to shift this with the American people to bring them united? I mean, think about that while we're on break, because I think this is a critical piece, especially in a world that's perceived divided. And we'll talk about the shift as we move from separation to unity along with this process. Guys, we're talking to Marianne Williamson here live in studio. I should say zooming into studio. And she is the Democratic presidential candidate. Come on.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
The Democratic
but she will be. She will be shooting to be the Democratic candidate. She'll be there, and so will we. So stay tuned. More to come. We'll be right back.
It's time to wake up, Atlanta. Wake up your inner self to the power of your intentions. Wake up to co-create the life you desire. Wake up to a conscious way of looking at the world with the uncensored Shannon McVeigh and the conscious voice of the South, Tim Ray. Tune into Awaken Atlanta on the UI Media Network, sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation, and discover a whole new way of looking at the world as we bring to you everything from wellness to entertainment, motivation to current events, games, contests, prizes, and much more. Listen to us on Spreaker and watch us live on Facebook at United Intentions every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. You can follow us on Instagram at United Intentions and on Twitter at Higher Intentions. We hope to see you there.
All right, we are back with Marianne Williamson. And Marianne, you mentioned before, I asked you a question, but before you answer that question, before break, what are the steps? What is the process you have to go through now to become the Democratic presidential candidate?
Which do you want me to answer first?
That one first.
I am running in the Democratic primary. Now, what happens is that the primary votes begin on February 3rd in Iowa. There are 4 early primary states: Iowa, Nevada, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And also California now begins its early voting on February 3rd. So in a very real way, you should count California as part of this. After that, there is a Super Tuesday. But in order to really place in this contest, you have to place in these 4 states. Now, this is the deal. The Democratic National Committee, which is not a governmental authority, it is a private organization, really, but it stages these debates. And there's almost like this illusion that it's governmental. It's not. And I did very well in the first 2 debates. In the second debate, I was the most Googled. And there was a real effort made to get me out of the debates. Creating this image of me as a crazy, wacko, new age lady who only believes in crystals and doesn't think people should go to the doctor and thinks that people should just love themselves. There's a lot of that.
Sure.
This projection onto the modern spiritual seeker that we're stupid or less intelligent, less,
taken out of context.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
And that really affected things. And it meant my poll results were lower. But even those poll results, it's a very funky thing who they poll. And as a consequence, I'm not in the debates now, and maybe I'll get into the 5th one. what that has done is to create the image among some people that I'm not in the race, but I'm very much in the race. So what it will take is for people to go to Marianne2020.com, donate money. Even, our average donation is $22. And even $1 is one of the unique donations that we need. I think sometimes people think all I have is $10, so what difference does it make? Every amount counts. And that, what the money does is to enable me to have enough digital ads, get on television. Some people say, Marianne, you need to get out there. Well, what they're saying is, I don't see you on TV. Well, you don't see me on TV because we can't buy those ads yet. So it takes people saying, wow, I want this. And to recognize that this country was not set up so that a bunch of political elites, whether it's on the Democratic or the Republican side, can narrow people's choices. That's what the primaries should do.
Right.
So that's what it will take. It will take people going to Marianne2020.com, pushing the volunteer button, pushing the donate button. If you're a volunteer in one of those states, we'll put you to work actually when I'm there in those states. But if you're not one of the, or door knocking, calling people, and even if you're not in one of those states, we'll put you on to work making phone calls, doing texts. So it's all about what you want to get involved in. And if you want to see love and conscience and basic humanitarian principle and democratic principle, I had the honor of meeting the Dalai Lama. And he said to me, the people of the world do not see the United States as a champion of democracy. They do not see, he said, the United States as a champion of humanitarianism. All of us need to think about that. And I think too many of us in the transformational higher consciousness movement have almost adopted this apolitical stance out of some artificial notion of what spirituality means. Because there's no religious or spiritual tradition that gives any of us a pass on addressing the suffering of other people and other sentient beings. So once again, on earth as it is in heaven, that's our job. That's why we are on the earth, not just in our personal relations to express love, but in our collective relationships to express love, our economic relationships to express love, our political relationships, our social relationships. That's what Dr. King was about. That's what Gandhi was about. And that's what we need to be about.
Well, it seems like, Marianne, that you're in a position where, because I know how challenging, I've been following politics for a long time, how challenging it is to get into the arena, become just a candidate, as you just described, and be a player in an environment that's kind of, it's set up for the good old boy system to keep who they want in there and who they don't want in there. Now, but it seems like you're the first one through the wall here when it comes to bringing spirituality back into politics, and you're getting the hits, and from people who are in that movement, I'm sure they're very appreciative of that. However, it may not be as simple and easy as you. But as we left off on break, that coming up with a plan to be the first one through the wall, to come up with a plan now to help unite people to the point where they're so divided than ever before. And, me personally, I believe it's done by design. I don't think it's just a coincidence people are fighting each other, But what's your plan to actually bring people together and unite them with this new spiritual perspective of leading?
I'm not enrolled in this image that everybody keeps repeating, that we're so divided.
Okay.
We're divided politically, but we're not divided as people. I don't know how you vote. When I'm out there in the world and I'm talking to people in a car or a bus or a train or a hotel, we're just people. It's only when you start saying, are you Republican or Democrat? Do you like Trump or not? So that's not the level of our deepest being. The deepest being, I don't think we're anymore. We're good people. Look how we are when there's a tragedy, you see it. Nobody asks, are you Democrat or Republican after 9/11? We were Americans. And that's how I'm talking to people. I'm not bashing, I'll sometimes say what simple facts are that we need to look at in terms of, say, the Trump administration, which I already did with the war in Yemen. But bashing each other, that's just not the conversation I'm having with the American people. The conversation I'm having is we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better. And we need a president again who thinks that they're president of everyone, not just those who agree. So there's no plan. There's just a state of consciousness and a way of being. We're all Americans. And so everybody keeps saying we're so divided, we're so divided. Well, let's stop talking about the reality. That's only one thin layer. That's just our politics. And it seems that way so much more because of social media. And it seems that way so much more because it's exacerbated by a political, a media, a system that makes it more that way. I remember that show Crossfire. It's like a blood sport. But in real life, that's not where we live in our hearts. And that's why I'm having a campaign that speaks to where we live in our hearts, because where we live in our hearts is where we're sane and where we're wise. And that's what we need.
What we focus on expands. And what you just referring to, so if we are focused on dividing, that will expand. And you're talking about uniting on love to expand that.
But that doesn't mean we don't have a healthy argument, because some people take what you focus on expands as a reason to not discuss politics. And that's not okay. We're grown-ups, and we need to. So many times people in the higher consciousness community, it's like we allow ourselves to act like children. No, these are very important issues. So like some people say, well, don't mention what's happening in Yemen because what you focus on expands. We have to be careful with that. If a doctor finds that you have stage 1 cancer, the doctor doesn't say, well, let's just not talk about it because what you focus on expands. If you don't focus on it, it's more likely it's going to become stage 2 cancer, stage 3 cancer, stage 4 cancer. So there's a lot of misuse of that principle in the spiritual community. Yeah, grown-ups focus on what's wrong in order to make it right.
I think that's well stated, because denial-based positive thinking, a lot of people in the community, I just can't think anything negative. I only think anything positive. And then that fear leading that not thinking negative manifests that self in
that's not spiritual. That's just faux spirituality. There was the crucifixion before the resurrection. And if you just talk about the resurrection without noting the crucifixion, you're not being spiritual. You're not being transcendent. You're in denial. There's a difference between denial and transcendence.
Well, I do think, like you're saying, Marianne, a lot of people have to get specific when you get involved in politics, especially running for president. You got to get specific in certain policies, like you mentioned a few already. But where I see a big concern right now for a lot of American people is our healthcare system. Our healthcare system seems to have, talk about, the good old boy system, right? But it seems to have a lot of challenges in there. You've been outspoken on vaccines in the past. What's your take now? Do you believe they're harmful, helpful? Where do you stand politically on that?
Well, vaccines save lives, I mean, whether you're talking about smallpox or polio, vaccines save lives. And most of the people I know who have their questions are about the bundling. The question is about how many children have to take. So most of the people that are now called anti-vax, in my opinion, they're not anti-vax, they're safe vax. If people are going to take vax. I understand about mandatories for things like measles, but some of this other stuff, I understand some of the questions people have. And I think that the important issue is to realize that, well, first of all, if the government, anytime you have any kind of medical intervention, there's going to be benefit and risk, and the government has to come down on the side of public safety. I'm not anti-science. I'm very much pro-science, but I want to see all scientific experimentation, and not experimentation, but research in this case, done not by pharmaceutical companies. That's all. We know what has happened with the Sackler family and the opioid crisis and the prescription and manufacture of the OxyContin. I think the American people have a right to know that the CDC and the FDA is completely on the up and up, that all research and development is done independently and without pharmaceutical money.
How would that be done if you were president? How would you make?
Well, that has to do with the empowerment of the FDA and the empowerment of the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Food and Drug Administration. We all know about what happened with the Boeing Max disasters. We know now that what happened was that Boeing was not being overseen by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, the way it should have been. And that's because these agencies, whether it's the FDA or the CDC or the FAA or the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, these agencies are set up in order to advocate for and protect the American people. So what you have is, there's capitalism, and then there's what's called unfettered capitalism. And capitalism is good, but unfettered capitalism is capitalism without a conscience. Capitalism, it's a virulent strain of capitalism in which short-term profit is made more important than anything else. Well, our safety should be more important than anything else. No decisions should be made because Boeing could make more money. No decisions could be made because pharmaceutical companies should make more money. That should not be our bottom line. That's what I meant before by economic values before humanitarian value. It should never be that, oh, big pharma will make more money, so we'll go there. Oil and gas will make more money, so we'll go there. Airline, Boeing will make more money, should we go there? No. Bottom line, what helps people? And then more money will be made because more people are there to thrive. So I see that on every single issue. I want total protection of the American people.
Well, I think it's very admirable in a society that you said that we are not being ran or being confused or misled by, you say, for example, pharmaceutical companies. Like you go on the media right now, Marianne, every third commercial is a prescription or some type of pill or some type of medical treatment that you need to get. And often these lead these media agencies to determine what their policies would be, even though it may be harmful to the American people.
Okay, so let's talk about this because this very much relates to what you asked me earlier about my campaign.
Okay.
First of all, people should know before the 1980s, before Ronald Reagan was president, it wasn't even legal for pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television. And in Europe, it's still not. Hello, because they create a false appetite. So that wasn't even legal before the 80s. So look at what happened in my campaign. After the second debate where I was the most Googled, blah, 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 there was clearly an effort to shut me down. And one of the things, and part of this story, is that Anderson Cooper on CNN, whose shows is mainly advertised by pharmaceutical companies.
Yes, true that.
And who admitted on his show that he takes antidepressants, ambushes me, and like I'm some crazy woman on the topic of antidepressants, because I had suggested, I don't know, maybe everybody didn't have to be on them. And mental health professionals, and I think that clergy is a mental health professional, have raised as many questions about their overprescription as about their underprescription. So what you just pointed on is exactly how it works. And I was excoriated, and you see what's happened because I made a comment about vaccines, a comment about antidepressants, and they have come after me hard. And any American who thinks that that's not the way it goes down in this country is fooling themselves. All the more reason, please go to Marianne2020.com and volunteer and donate in order that people, if you do agree with what I'm saying, knowing that we have to make up for the fact that those are the same political and corporate and media forces that want to shut down any voices that do not totally agree.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I have to agree with you, Marianne, that a lot of this corporations do influence the media, whether directly or indirectly, as you just mentioned.
No, there's no indirectly here.
Yeah, okay.
Let's stop kidding ourselves. Right. Let's stop kidding ourselves.
I'm with you on that.
And when I said before that the people in the higher consciousness community need to sometimes realize we're men and not boys, and women and not girls. Yeah. We need to not be so precious and pussyfooting around. Yeah. This is a form of it's soft tyranny. It's it's not okay.
Marianne, we take one last quick break, and we get back. Let's talk about what advice you could give. A couple more questions, but what advice can you give the spiritual conscious community how to engage in more of the politics? Because most, I have to say, and you hit it on the nose, are just over it. They feel like they can't get involved in it because it's going to taint them in some negative way. But let's talk about how we have to go through this rather than try to go around it. We're talking to Marianne Williamson. She's hopefully she'll be running and get his diversity out there to become a presidential candidate here soon. With your information, she can share with you when she comes back on how, if that you want to see her in that role, then you have to get involved. So guys, more to come. Stay tuned. Only 15 minutes left, so start sharing this now. Get the good word out. Information's coming your way. We'll be right back.
Download the UI Media Smart app at uimediaapp.com to watch and listen to all your favorite shows anytime from anywhere in the world. Shows that enrich, entertain, educate, and feeds the conscious cells throughout your body. We bring you never heard before topics in health, inspiration, music, psychics, numerology, current affairs, controversies, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.uimediaapp.com and start raising your frequency now.
All right. We are coming back here now with Marianne Williamson. She's running for president. And again, Marianne, where can people go? And before you even answer this question, any candidate out there wants to be on the UI Media Network. We're a nonprofit. Anybody come in. We're not favoring anyone. We just want to give an option for people to share their authentic truth and get the good word out there. And I think diversity, you said earlier, you can't have a limited people running for office. You have to have it open to who the country believes that they want to see. So thank you for staying in the race and still moving forward with everything you got going on. So Marianne, we left off on what advice you want to give the people in the spiritual community, and that you've been there for decades, how they're may have to get their hands dirty?
Well, we're not children, and we need to stop treating ourselves like we are. You're a citizen of the United States of America, and that comes with not only a lot of rights, but also comes with responsibilities. Now, in this case, we have a presidential candidate who comes out of this community. So it's almost like I don't know what more you want, And so what you can do is stand with this campaign. You can go to Marianne2020.com. You can donate money. You can talk to your friends. You can tag me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. You can make your own video testimonial. You can look at the issues section on my site. You can sign up to volunteer. I'll give you an example. One of the things I want is a Department of Peace. And I want a Department of Peace because we need the equivalent of the health and wellness space in our body politic. You can't just take medicine. You also have to cultivate health. Well, you can't just endlessly prepare for war. You have to cultivate peace. These are the kinds of things that we stand for. And so with my campaign, we're standing for them within the national dialogue. This is a big deal. I heard somebody say, help Marianne. And then somebody said, it's not about help Marianne. It's about all of us co-creating within the dimension of a presidential campaign that is out there, the principles that so many of us believe in, which is that love and wisdom and decency should guide all of our behavior. Why should that be different in our collective behavior than in our individual behavior? So that's what people can do. Now, when you say get your hands dirty, what are we talking about here? It's fun. Be an adult, participate. This preciousness, I don't know where it came from, but it's not, you don't sacrifice your intelligence or your fierceness or your grit to be a spiritual seeker. You bring those things with you. I mean, like I said, the evangelicals and the Quakers were the abolitionists.
Right.
That historically, the people who believe that something is morally wrong and we should take a stand, that was the spiritual people. Now, I'm not talking about private morality, but public morality. So I think that it's time for us to get over all this false resistance we have to being grown-ups. This is a very serious moment on this planet. Mm. And I think that those of us who believe in a higher power, those of us who believe that we are responsible on this earth for being conduits for the love that is the truth of who we are, we better get busy, because we have millions of traumatized children whose despair is just being normalized. We have millions of American children. We have 13 million hungry children in the United States. We have 100,000 homeless children in the United States. We have 93 million people living near poverty in the United States. We have an environmental crisis that could lead to social collapse unlike anything we've ever seen within 20 years if we don't reverse it now. We have contaminants in our water. We have carcinogens in our food. We have toxins in our air. We have the pesticides being sold that we know do harm to a child's brain. Don't tell me it's spiritual to not take a stand about those things.
Well, wonderful. And outside of supporting you in your campaign, I assume you'd recommend people to get involved in local politics?
Absolutely. I see politics kind of like a soap opera. You turn it on, you don't know what's going on. But after about 5 days, you can't wait to watch the next one because you want to know what happened. A lot of us just haven't been involved. You talked earlier about people getting back. A lot of the people you're talking about never were in. And that's because we're not taught enough as
citizens.
As students. I mean, we have 11 states in the United States that don't even require half a year of of education about American history and civics. The truth of the matter is it's exciting. And if you think, oh, when people say I'm not political, well, be careful with that one. There's a saying, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. Good luck. I'll give you an example. Good luck with all that gluten-free and all that green juice, because as long as they're spewing the toxins and the carcinogens into the air and the food, you can't escape it.
Yeah.
So come on, everybody. We have some people might not agree with my policies. And if that's the case, then I respect that. But if somebody does look at my website and thinks, wow, we should have a Department of Peace, and we should have a Department of Children and Youth, and we should take care of our historical debts, whether it's reparations or anything else. If you agree with that, come on, let's do this. Every single area that the higher consciousness community touches transforms. All those yoga mats come from us. All that mindfulness stuff comes from us. And the only reason we haven't transformed politics yet is because we haven't been there. Let's go there. Where are millions and millions and millions of people, and yes, you have money to spend. All these people, oh, I don't have the money. Yes, you do. You just bought a $250 pair of Lululemon yoga pants. We're just not in the habit, the mental habit of giving to politics.
Yeah, people don't have money. I say people don't have money for their bills, but they have money for their dreams. Yeah.
That's right. So, at this point, for those who do agree with what I'm saying and do agree that we should have a more spiritual and more transcendent notion of what matters imbued in our political as well as our personal situations, Marianne 2020, and I hope you'll help me.
Wonderful. So you mentioned a little earlier about your critics. They seem to have a strong opinion about you running for president, and whether you'll qualify or not. What do you have to say to those people who are, looking to you not make it?
Well, first of all, I am qualified to run for president.
All right.
And I am running for president. They can't make me not run for president. What they can do is try to convince you that I shouldn't. It's a mind game. The Constitution of the United States says that in order to run for president, the qualification is that you were born here, which I was, that you were 35 or older, which I am, that you have lived here for 14 years. I have. That's all. The founders, if they'd wanted to say you have to be a congressman, you have to be a senator, you have to be a governor, they would have, but they didn't, because they were leaving it up to every generation to determine for itself the skill set that generation feels is necessary to navigate the times in which we live. Now, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, said the primary job of the presidency is moral leadership, not the administrative aspect. We have a lot of political mechanics, everyone. We have a lot of experienced politicians. Experienced politicians took us into Iraq. Experienced politicians took us into Vietnam. We have a lot of political mechanics, and of course, we need them. They need to be in the government. They need to be in the administration. But the president, it's like, who's going to decide what road we drive to Milwaukee? The car mechanic? The car mechanic might be the best car mechanic in the world. The car mechanic doesn't know the map. That's not what the car mechanic does. We need a political visionary right now, more than we just need another political mechanic in the office of the presidency. And I believe that someone who has had a 35-year career, understanding the deeper dynamics of how we got someplace and what the deeper dynamics are that need to change, and what public policies for children, for peace, for the earth, for the average person, how they have to be realigned with those deeper dynamics in order for people to thrive, in order for people to unleash the spirit of the American people, to uncap people's dreams, to help us get to the point where we are everything that we can be. That's how you have peace, and that's how you have prosperity.
Well, you heard it live, guys, on UI Media Network. Marianne Williamson telling she is qualified and why she could make change. Marianne, I had one other question for you, too. I wanted to ask you, if for whatever reason you don't win the election, you don't become the Democratic candidate, and you win the election, how are you going to get your agenda forward with your ideals? Are you gonna go back out and relax, go fishing, or are you going to stay fighting in the political arena?
Well, I don't think that I'm fighting now.
Oh, good.
I'm offering, and I am here because my heart says to be here. And every day of my life, whether I'm in the White House or somewhere else, I will seek to do my best to be where my heart says to be. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? Just like you and like everybody else who's listening, we all have an internal guidance system, and we're seeking to live it. And that's what I'll seek to do. I'm sure it's what you're seeking to do. And all that politics is where we are collectively following our guidance system. And that guidance system should be love and wisdom and conscience, collectively as well as individually. That's what guides me now, and that's what will always guide me as long as I have the good fortune of being on this earth.
Well, wonderful, wonderful to hear that. Now, I did want to ask you a question in reference to Nelson Mandela.
No, he did not write "Return to Love," and he did not write that paragraph.
Okay, so I mean, but how does it feel to be quoted by Nelson Mandela?
No,
I mean,
I was not.
oh,
That's
you were
my
not.
point.
Okay, you were not.
I
Okay.
was not. If I had been quoted by Nelson and Mandela, I would be beyond honored, obviously. But it's simply an urban myth.
Oh, no kidding.
Like most of what you hear about me.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that too. But in reference to the essence of the quote, that it's not that we're not enough; it's that we don't realize how powerful of a multi-sensory being that we are. Can you share your thoughts on your soul and how that's really perhaps will be the new politics in the future?
Well, I'm running for president. Have you noticed? I mean, that's kind of like claiming your power.
I know, right?
And as I said before, very seriously, it's when every person manifests the most that they can be that America wins.
Mm.
That's why I believe that all public policy should be based around the core principle: what helps people thrive? That's why I want universal health care. That's why I want free college. That's why I want people to be unshackled from these college loans so that they can go do that which their heart says to do, which by definition is powerful and good and true. And it creates a higher vibration of peace and possibility for everyone. That's how you heal a society.
Wonderful. Well, Marianne, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us live on air. And one more time, best place to go for people who want to support you. Where can they go?
Marianne2020.com and create the buzz. Donate, volunteer, make your own video, tag me on social media. There are so many of us in this community. If we want this to happen, we can make it happen.
Wonderful. And thank you again. And everyone, if anyone, other candidates want to come out and get their truth out, we are open forum for anyone who believes that they believe they can make a change in the election. So thank you very much, Marianne. And thank you all for listening. Until next time, be cool and get involved. It's fun, they say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to The Good Intention Show on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention Show is sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation at unitedintentions.org. Look for us on Blog Talk, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and many more. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram under United Intentions, and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Be sure to log on to unitedintentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions, one intention at a time. Have a wonderful day, and until next time, live life with intent. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests.